that was tested daily prior to work. And we have a second one that has been exposed as well, who's a close contact, that is being tested daily as well.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, is there any possibility of doing rapid tests instead of PCR? We're doing PCR, correct?
Right, so our supply of Binax rapid tests are, they go hand in hand with our pool testing, and it's based on a percentage of students that you have in your school. If we were to employ some kind of serial testing program or a test-to-stay program or something, we would need a larger supply of tests, and we would have to look to pay out of the district for that supply. What we hope is that the state will implement a test-to-stay program where we're going to have more of those, and we'll be able to do more serial testing at that time. I will say that we did have 2 weeks ago 8 positive pools at the elementary school, and we had a box of our Binax now that did not pass the quality test. There's a quality test measure you have to take before starting, so we lost an entire box, and we did not have enough tests to conduct pool testing, and we had parents waiting out in the parking lot with their children, waiting to get tested. We made a call to Northern Maine Medical Center. They gave us 100 tests free of charge so that we can conduct our tests. So we are very appreciative of the support that we get from our community partners.
Okay. Anybody else have something to add, Leroy?
I do. Actually, I wrote this down to make sure that I correctly formulated what I wanted to say. Before I say it, I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is nothing personal. But I'd like to make a motion, considering we're still in the old business, correct? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to remove Dr. Hart as our SAD 27 medical advisor, and for us to search and find someone else who can be unbiased and provide facts on both sides of these issues for the people that have put us here.
Second that.
Leroy has a motion. Gary Sibley has seconded the motion. Do we have any discussion? Ms. Bowler?
Do you have some?
Go ahead.
I would just be curious I'd be curious how high in demand her position is, to be honest. And I guess I would be concerned about who else we could even find to do that.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, please.
Well, I was checking to make sure that was okay.
Oh.
The reason why I brought that is because the board counts on what our medical advisor has to say. Like I said, this is nothing personal, but everything that I have heard said is contrary to public belief. There's something on both sides, and as Dr. Hart sat there or stood there and spoke tonight, there were so many things that I had written down that contradicted themselves, and I wasn't here, and I don't know if when Dr. Hart was selected, appointed, however this position was filled, I just feel that we could possibly find somebody that would be less this far and more towards a middle ground to be able to give more unbiased information. Does that answer your question?
It does, but I guess, from what I've observed here, and the doctors who have been here, they all seem to have the same views. I would be curious who we would find to share both those views. I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, we don't select a medical.
So, if it's okay,
Yeah.
So last year we had selected Dr. Roberts as our medical advisor is a $5,000 like stipend. They're donating their time, so it's not like, you know, they're essentially donating their time. Dr. Roberts has a young family. She could not continue this year. When she stepped down, I asked her if she could recommend anyone that we could approach. She gave me a couple of names, one from Northern Maine Medical, one from Fish River Rural Health. Reached out to both parties, both declined. So at that point in time, reached out to Peter Sirwa at Northern Maine Medical, and also Heather Pelletier at Fish River, asked for them to recommend. So the recommendation that came at that time was for Dr. Hart, because she was willing to do it, and that's how she was appointed this year, based on that.
I don't have anybody in mind, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
But I think that there could be more of a democratic way to fill that role, and I know that it's like you stated, I mean, there's nobody jumping down the door to be our medical advisor, but in the same token, I think that we owe it to the children and the people that have put us in these positions to be able to have unbiased information.
Yeah, and I think it's like what Mr. Shinarda brought up. He also wants to hear, you know, what are also the side effects, either psychological or physical, emotional, and I get that part of it, and I'm sure that's something we can ask, you know, Dr. Hart to keep in mind in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important that we have factual, concise information to go off, and not opinion, and not likely it was skewed this way, or likely they didn't collect this. I mean, you all saw the email chain that we had going today with Dr. Hart. It shouldn't take up that much of our time of the day, and we shouldn't have to ask for that type of information. That should be what we're receiving. I mean, you guys all saw the emails. There was a few you didn't. I mean, we're good. We emailed some after too, but just the facts. I don't want your opinion. I want the facts.
Toby, you have anything to add?
We want her opinion. That's exactly why we have a doctor, is to have their opinion. If we just want facts, we can Google stuff all night and check on Facebook, but we want opinion. We want opinion from a trained individual. I think if there's an issue with anything Dr. Hart is presenting, I think the board should ask the question to her directly. I think trying to can her like this is cowardly instead of asking her the question. She was just here earlier. I mean, it would be absurd to get rid of a doctor because she disagreed with your opinion.
It wasn't about disagreeing with.
I'm talking, Leroy.
It's not made personal.
But the thing is she presented medical facts. And
On
you're
one
saying
side,
she needs to
though.
present
Yeah,
medical
yeah,
facts that are
let's
more
just-
like the ones you believe. And that's the problem with facts, is they're facts. They're medical facts. The CDC puts forth medical facts that we have to rely on. And we're going to rely on somebody who's trained, who's here, who can do it. I mean, it's facts are facts. There's no middle ground there. And that's what I don't understand, is it's not an either or. It's not somewhere in between. I mean, it's dark outside. It's just dark outside. The doctor presented facts tonight, and I don't think we can sit there and say, well, we don't agree with her facts. Those were opinions. They're facts, and she's a medical professional with an opinion based in fact. I don't think it's fair to come in and say we need to find another doctor whose interpretation of facts is different than hers because we don't like hers. I don't think what she said tonight was unfair. She was able to address Mr. Chenard over him being very upset with her, and addressed a number of issues on the fly. She wasn't prepared to do that tonight. I mean, if I were at council table and somebody threw questions like that at me, I would have stammered and had a really hard time. I think she performed really well. She was able to provide some facts, but it didn't matter. I don't feel like it did. I don't think anybody was listening. I mean, if you want facts, I think present the questions before the meeting, and she'll present evidence to us. That's her job. And I think that that would be a reasonable thing to ask. If after we ask her to present on certain issues, she comes in and says, screw you guys, I'm not telling you anything, then I agree. Let's talk about getting rid of her. But she hasn't even had an opportunity to show that she can't do the job. It's absurd to me. It's just absurd.
Get-
Well, there is
Gary.
in between on this, Toby, because there's facts on both sides of this. There's no solid conclusive evidence one way or the other, and we need to know both sides of it. That's all we're asking for, and that's what Dr. Hart and I talked about today in the emails. We need facts on both sides.
I think what happens, we get caught up in the heat of the moment, all these emails coming through last minute, you know, these questions pop up in our head that I think we really need to be more proactive as a board, starting tomorrow, to think about what we want to ask at the next meeting. And we want facts and we want data. Leroy, do you have something to follow up with on what Toby had said?
No, I don't.
Ms. Lowe?
I agree with them, we need facts on both sides, and I understand she shares her opinion, but we need facts to back up opinions, if that's how it's gonna be. We can't just have one-sided, I say, I think, this is what I feel. I understand she sees it firsthand, like, obviously I don't see it firsthand. But just having facts on both sides, the way I look at it is it helps balance everything, and it helps me get a better idea of, okay, yeah, this is what I want.
Sarah, I completely passed over you behind Gary.
That's okay. I agree with Toby's stance of not firing somebody without asking them to do their job in a way that you want. We can't predict that. Being that she's my sister-in-law, I would have to abstain from the position. I think that's appropriate. I think she does a great job.
Very good. Ms. Fuller?
I don't know that, I just think that we need to ask her. I think that maybe, you're right, she didn't come prepared with the negative effects. So I think in the future, we ask her to come prepared to share that. And then if she does or does not do that, like with any employee, we can go off that. I guess that's what I would recommend.
Well, I'm just going to end with this. If you're a professional in this community and you're giving your counsel or your advice, I think we owe it to them. We don't have enough professionals in this community. We probably can't recruit enough professionals to replace open positions fast enough when there's an opening at the hospital. So for us to show this sort of disrespect, I think it's a shame. I do think Dr. Hart could maybe have worked a little better as far as staying away from opinion, but she was on the spot, to her defense, and we're throwing a lot at her over these past few days. And obviously, there was some information thrown at her during the meeting. So I really don't think that's fair to her as a professional that we do that to her. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and end discussion, and we're going to go ahead and take a vote.
Can I just say something?
Go ahead.
So depending on, and I have no stake in the game, so depending on how you vote, maybe that'll change, but moving forward, maybe if it's helpful, the board direct all those questions to me. I can compilate them and then send them to her, probably more than 2 days in advance of a board meeting, because I'm sure, they have a day job to do, and, there's a lot going on. And I know we right after a board meeting, we're exhausted and we don't want to think about it till later, till the next meeting, but if that's
The day
helpful,
before the next meeting.
if that's helpful, I'm willing to take all of your questions, put them together in one doc, push them out to Dr. Hart or whoever our medical advisor is, and then give them time to reflect.
can you share a Google Doc amongst board members?
I can.
That we can just plug in questions?
I can.
As we go, because I mean, I don't know about you, but this whole email thing in Gmail, I guess I haven't mastered Gmail yet, but it's just absolutely crazy, the amount of forwarded messages and replies and follow-ups. It's just,
Mr. Sidley is proficient at Gmail. He can help you.
can you? Let's see
I
what.
had trouble with attachments today, I'm not gonna lie.
So I think we've found a partial solution in a way.
I'm willing to
kind
be
of-
helpful, help streamline the communications, and I'm just offering that.
Very good. All right.
Would you be happy if we made a formal request to her on what we want for information? Withdraw our motion?
You know what I want? I just want everybody to have unbiased information. I mean, that's
Right.
it. I mean, it's not hard. Our vote tonight was harder. I mean, just simple.
Well, and then, there's bias, intentional or not, and then also the appearance of bias, which we have to also be mindful of, but, Gary, you had made the original motion to remove Dr., or Leroy, you made the motion to remove Dr. Hart as our medical advisor. Gary, you seconded it. All those in favor of removing Dr. Hart as our medical advisor, please raise your hand. Leroy? All those against?
Sarah's gonna abstain.
Sarah's abstaining. Toby?
I'm against. Sorry.
Toby's against. Abigail's against. Gary?
I'll abstain.
Gary abstains. Sarah abstains. Ms. Lozier?
I'm gonna abstain just because I like what he said, kind of just with the,
So the motion fails. Dr. Hart stays on as our medical advisor. And I apologize if I'm not speaking loud enough. I seem to be gravitating towards this end of the gym, and this is the empty part, aside from the board. Okay, do we have anything else that we want to discuss underneath old business? School reintegration plan. Oh, it's covered. Ben, anybody? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to board planning discussion, item B.
Move to table this.
Well, anybody else looking to second Toby's motion?
Toby moved to table that item.
I'm not going to second it.
Okay, fine.
Nobody seconded the motion?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Withdraw your motion? Okay, great.
Sorry.
The reason why I say it's great is because we do have to have a brief discussion. I know we talked about it last time. Our Valley Unified Board meeting got postponed to a later date.
Can we move our tables around so we can hear each other? Because I can't hear Isabel.
Okay,
Do you mind if we move the tables in?
go for it. This work better for everybody?
Say hi, Isabel. Okay, I can hear you now.
Where were we? Okay, Valley Unified.
Yes.
That was one of the subjects underneath board planning discussion, Ben. We recently had to postpone the meeting due to inclement weather. And Gary, I think you might not be able to make our next Valley Unified meeting? Was that, so there was a date you said you couldn't?
Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, those dates aren't working for anyone, so I proposed January dates.
Do we have anything else that needs to be brought forth at the Valley Unified Board meeting besides what we've already discussed?
Well, I think there were a couple proposed motions in the draft agenda that we should probably talk about. The proposed motion, as I recall, to basically extend the contract for another 5 years starting in, like now. Is that correct, Ben?
So right now, you're under a term of 100 years, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. The proposal is to work in 5-year increments, so that every 5 years, the board can decide whether or not they want to continue as a Valley Unified.
And I think the proposed motion had, basically, we'd start counting in 2021 and go to 2026. And I guess, from my perspective, I'd rather start from where we started originally, like when we formed Valley Unified, and start our year counting then, and not because we're already, what, 3 years into this? Since we formed Valley Unified? Because my 3-year term is up. So yeah, we're on year 3. So I guess my understanding, and it was never explicit, we never talked about it, would be that my understanding is that we would start from year 1, which is when I was first on the board, and count our 5 years from then, which would have been, what, in 2019, 18? So that's kind of my feeling, but I kind of want feedback from the board.
I was just trying to get you guys shorter terms. That was my goal.
No, I understand, but I just, like I said, I think my perception, because we weren't explicit, we said 5 years, and my perception was 5 years starting from 2018 or 19 or whatever, and that's all. I just wanted a feedback from the board. Because I know we were okay with 5-year terms, but I think, I wanted to make sure I wasn't the only one who
Right. Well,
got their wires crossed.
Just for clarity's sake, for the younger board members, when we entered into the agreement, I think it was, what, a 23-year arrangement? 25. Okay. So, the proposal is to go to a 5-year agreement, and after 5 years, if one of the member units decides to withdraw, I believe that was what we're talking about then, as far as proposing that. So, does anybody see any reason why we shouldn't stick with what Ben proposed as far as the 5 years?
Well, I think the question is, when does the 5 years start in our, are we all on the same page as to when 5 years starts?
Oh, I see what you're asking.
Because if 5 years starts today, we've already got 3 years, that's 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
We were talking about making a retroactive.
Yes, to say we start 5 years from the beginning, not 5 years from today.
And
And that was a misunderstanding on my part. I assumed we were going to start at 2018 or when we first started, not today. So I just want to make sure, because we all said that was fine, but if I misunderstood it, I assumed other people could misunderstand it too, and I wanted to make sure we're on the same page. That's all.
Okay.
Because I read that, I was like, oh, I thought it was 5 years from when we started, not 5 years from today. So
So-
that's what I want to ask the board is that, like, where are we with that? Does that make sense to everybody, or am I sounding like a crazy person?
Does the 5 years start today, or?
3 years ago.
Yeah, okay. I don't know.
I would say from the moment we sign on to a new ILA, right?
I would think so, yeah. That would make the most sense.
That would be the start date.
You guys are okay with
Of a
5 years
modified-
starting today?
We're at 25 years
Well, no, I'm just asking
Yeah.
before we go in, because I got to represent you guys. 5 years starting today works for you, if that's the proposal? Isabel?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's gonna be 5 years either way. I mean, I understand that if we start 5 years now, it's technically 8 years. But after the first 5 years, or 8 years, whatever is up, then it's gonna be 5 years. That's what I see it as.
Is that Common Core math?
It might be.
I
I
guess.
wasn't in high school long ago.
Enough about Valley Unified.
I think the larger the organization you are, the harder, or the longer it takes to steer the ship, the larger you are. If that makes any sense? I think going with 5 years is sufficient time. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah,
And you proposed it.
so my aim with that motion was not only to get you the shorter terms, but also to make it palatable for your counterparts to accept that as well. And don't want to go in, guns blazing and asking for everything. So that was kind of my.
So this is for clarification, right?
I just wanted to make sure we all understood, because last time we talked about it was 5 years, but we didn't really nail down like 5 years from today or 5 years from when we started. That's all I wanted to make sure everyone was cool with.
The only question, are you done?
Done, yeah.
Topic? Okay,
Sorry.
sorry. The only other question I had for you, Ben, is the board makeup. And let's just say that Valley Unified Board makeup consists of 4 or more SAD 27 members. How does that work? Because that would be also considered a quorum for SAD 27.
Right, so Madawaska currently has a quorum when they go to Valley Unified because they're a board of 5. So we sought legal counsel on that, and as long as they're not representing, when they're at that board meeting, they're not representing Madawaska School Department, they're representing Valley Unified Board. So it's acceptable. Again, my goal in what I've tried to prepare was to get you at least the equivalent of your cost share, which I think is what you guys have been saying all along, and your community has been saying. And I recognize that an even number is difficult, but it also it can also be a blessing as well, because you get to see people crossing over. So again, it was part of my method. I have my moments. This is one of them.
Anybody else have any concerns about Valley Unified they'd like us to bring up to the Valley Unified Board? I think we're good. Anything else underneath planning discussion? Or do we want to just go ahead and think we spent enough time here tonight? What do you think? Haven't had one of these in a while, I guess. American Rescue Plan, item C, ESSER fund project approval.
Just wanted to let you know that it's been approved, and we're moving forward, so all is good.
Okay.
9 o'clock, we're getting to approval of minutes.
Wow.
That's a first.
Item 5, approval of minutes.
So moved.
Section A, regular meeting 9:03 on November 1, 2021.
Second?
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Gary?
I already moved the motion.
Toby made the motion, Gary made the second. Any discussion? All those in favor? None opposed? Approval of financial statements?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed? Okay, moving on. Superintendent updates and notifications.
I'm just going to give you the $2 update. We had an opportunity to apply for what was called community school funding. Whereas I've heard this board talk about, really working with the community to enhance programming within the community. I reached out to Keith. He thought it was a good idea, so I submitted a letter of intent. I don't know what the process will entail from here on out, but I just wanted to put our hat in there just to not lose an opportunity. So the funding could be up to $250,000 per year. That's awarded to us if approved.
Is that recurring?
Yes.
So it didn't sound like there were any strings. I mean, obviously, the devil's in the details, and if we get awarded it,
You have
that's
to,
when.
yeah, you have to forge those partnerships with all the community-based partners, so it is outlined in that priority notice.
Right.
I have a lot of questions, but I know that we do some of this stuff already, and we're already a community high school. We just don't have the designation from the state to give us a subsidy, so I think we might as well give it a shot.
So if we get selected, you'll have to come back to the board.
Right.
And we're going to decide, we're going to take a vote on whether to accept the funds.
Correct. Well, there's a lot of work that goes
Yeah.
into the requirements, but one of the steps is the board approving a plan.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to administrator reports. I jumped ahead.
Nope, that's where we are.
Okay. Mr. Kaleta? There he is. What do you have for us?
Well, I sent it to you guys last week, so just briefly going through it, we've...
Yeah, if you want to kind of hit on the...
Sure, gonna hit on the high points here. Just had a great season, you know, as far as our sporting teams. Very proud of our Warriors, you know, from our soccer all the way through. VRMS and CHS, you know, soccer teams, you know, boys made it to the finals, girls made it to the semifinals. It was awesome. We had, you know, I think some good student activity. We had Spirit Week for the first time a couple years. So, you know, it's somewhat feels like we're kind of getting back to normal, which was really important for us. You know, we had a great truck parade and, you know, a lot of student activity. It was just, it was fun again. I think that was like the high point of my fall. You know, we're having some growing pains with the new standardized testing. Sum that up, it'd take a while to go through that, but we've got an overabundance of standardized testing due to the state has changed their standardized testing for the 4th time in 8 years. So it makes it very hard to get good longitudinal data. So, you know, beside having it in the spring, we also now have to do it in the fall. So we're trying to figure out what's the best way for us to do the standardized testing without burning the kids out on it, because the more testing you do, the less interest the kids have in it and the worse they do. So it's kind of like this catch-22 we're in. So we're trying to figure that out as a district here. Parent-teacher conferences went well. We offered Zoom as well as in-person, as well as you know, email. So we gave a lot of options. We had just a little bit down from last year where we went totally Zoom, but it went well overall. Let's see. Just talking about our number of quarantined students in the first 4 weeks, we had 82. Yeah, it's before harvest, 82 quarantine. And in the next 8 weeks, we had 82 quarantine, okay? And, you know, a lot of that is, since then, we've started the pool testing program since then. So that's kept our numbers of quarantine kids down, you know, in the average. So, and of course, with, as I mentioned before, we had 2/3 of our kids are vaccinated. And I think that's why we're not having as many issues as we are next door. So hopefully, you know, with some more vaccines coming out for the younger kids, that'll change. As like Ben said, we, you know, got some COVID fatigue, but we're trying to, you know, brighten things up for this month. We've got a Deck the Doors contest, and we'll have some holiday bingo, and just doing some stuff for the staff as well to try to keep everybody, you know, enjoying ourselves a little bit more this time of year. And that's about it right now.
First, I'd like to apologize for the board area, right? We did receive all these reports. I still feel a little bit torn about getting some face-to-face interaction. We need to also hear from you folks. So if I mean, we have Robby, Mr. Nadeau, we have you next on the list. If you have something you feel like you need to bring forth in addition to whatever you already emailed us, that's fine, but I'm not going to press you on these.
But just to reiterate, you know, we saw the uptick in cases, definitely looking at instituting a little bit more distancing. We know the CDC is recommending 3 to 6 feet. Earlier in the year, we were more on the lower end of that, so we've gone up to the higher end of that. So we're really hoping that this 10-day stretch of remote, or 10-day stretch of students kind of being out of the building, when they come back in, we're going to see a big difference in any type of spread that you might have in school because of what we're doing at lunch, what we're doing now at breakfast, and then the reminders that we've been giving the kids for recess. So there's that. The other piece is when you're looking at remote learning, I don't think anybody would say that anybody loves remote learning, but I have to tell you that the teachers are doing a fantastic job of remote learning at this point. Compared to the last few rounds that we've had, I really feel like they've really stepped up and been amazing. Our parents and our guardians and our babysitters have stepped up and have been amazing. We had a couple classrooms today, some of our youngest learners, our kindergartners, 100% attendance in the live sessions for the remote learning, which is absolutely incredible because you're talking about our staff getting everything set up and ready for those people to be able to do that. parents communicating with babysitters, caregivers, that type of thing. We went on the phone with memes and pepes, getting them set up and making sure things work for them. So remote, definitely not a good thing, but in terms of these last few days of remote, everybody, I think in the community, the school community, parents, teachers, everybody has really stepped up and I think done an amazing job, whether you want it to be remote or not. Everybody's really stepped up. So we have to thank our teachers, our staff, and our community for that.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, do you have something you'd like to add in addition to your,
No, sometimes I struggle to come up with something to give to the board.
Yeah.
And I usually try to find out something that I want to know. And I'm curious how many students we lost that were in homeschool. And when I look at the amounts from amount of students from the fall of 2018 till now, our number was exactly the same that we have. So I guess it, people move into town, some people, it kind of all works out. So I was just looking at it for my own information, which was helpful.
oh, there he is. Peter, do you have anything to add on top of what we already discussed earlier?
I think the letter that I sent out, the notes that I sent out, pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to hold you any longer other than saying that, I think that we're facing a challenge here in early February that nobody really throughout the state wants to see, that driver retention is going to be an issue. New drivers are going to be even harder to find as the states put mandates across the table of the mandatory training, mandatory licensing change. We're not going down a very good road to find help. So I stress that as a point that we really need to try to encourage people and encourage them to be part of a school and to be part of transportation, to be part of, and it's also encouraging the local, the people that are working already for our school, be it, ed techs or, folks that are working for our school, to take on the responsibility of transportation and transportation of our students, because we're facing a pretty dreary area that's coming in without having drivers, as our team is aging, and there's not a lot of young folks that are stepping up to the plate to do these jobs in many different facets, not only transportation. So I think everything else is pretty well explained as far as some of the renovations at the elementary school, some of the changes at the high school, when we talked about some of the facilities and so on. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask, and I do the best I can to answer them. Open door policy always works the best for me, so give me a call if I can help you with anything. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Item 8, committee reports.
The only thing I have is policy. We have a second read of policy BEDB, agenda preparation and dissemination.
You have that memorized.
Make a motion to approve the second read and adoption of policy BEDB.
Motion made by Gary, seconded by Abby. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Also have a first read, and I attached the law that prompted this. LD 185 or LD 816, an act to improve communication between school board members and school employees and members of the public, was went into law June 19. Maine School Management, Drummond and Woodson, worked on a template policy that outlines the board relationship and communication with staff. Whereas the board has a venue to communicate with the public monthly through your monthly meetings, the communication with public is less concerning, as is the communication with staff. So this outlines the expectations for that, so I encourage you to just read it, and then we can discuss next meeting.
Okay, we don't take a vote on first read, but for those of you that are new to the board, if you have not ever, at the very least, skimmed through the MSBA handbook, I highly recommend it. I think I may have emailed you a copy. Ms. Lozay, did you get a copy as well?
When they do their intake, I give them a copy.
So there's some, okay, great. I'm not aware.
Yep.
Great. So some valuable information as far as how we ought to conduct ourselves as board members, amongst staff, and the public, and our relationship with the superintendent, which even for those of us that have been on the board a while, it's always good to look back and have a little refresher on it. So that's my 2 cents.
I have to say, as a lawyer, this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Because the act says you should be talking to people who work at the school, and the policy says don't talk to people at the school. Even for me, this is a bridge too far, but we'll talk about it in the next meeting.
Okay.
Kind of contradicted.
A little.
Okay, okay, new business, item 8. There's on item 8, it can't be item 8.
Oh,
Well,
yes,
There's two eights there, sorry. So it should be item 9.
9.
Under items for information, we have no retirements, we do have one resignation. It's an adjustment to your agenda. We have a resignation that just came in yesterday from Miguel Barnaby. We hired him about a month ago, but he is pursuing an opportunity at the U.S. Army, so he's giving us 2 weeks' notice. His last day, Ms. Kelly, will be when? 16th.
Did you say Ed Tech?
Ed Tech 101, yeah. I need a motion to
Okay.
accept Miguel Barnaby's resignation.
Do we have a motion to accept? Moved by Sarah to accept
Second.
resignation, seconded by Toby. Any discussion? All in favor? None opposed? No transfers or new hires?
Yeah, we have new hires, but I don't have a letter for you. It's just so that you know, we hired 2 part-time Ed Tech one-on-ones to ride the bus with a special needs student. And so the recommendation is to hire Verona Martin and Nola Daigle for this part-time service. I believe they do 3 hours. 3 hours. Yeah.
second.
Toby made a motion to approve, seconded by Ms. Fuller. Any discussion? Ms. Kelly, you answered my question. Thank you very much. I am getting questions though about the bus situation, and I understand it's handicap accessible, and that's what we have to use in St. Francis for the one student. But we understand the optics of that and the questions that I might hear from the community about why we have a bus for one student.
Yeah. We do have a wheelchair accessible van now, but that's being used for another student in another community. So when we're sending the bus one way, we're sending the van the other way.
I guess I'm not familiar with what you're referring to.
We have students with mobility needs, so they need handicap accessible transportation to school. So we actually have one in Wallagrass. We're sending a minivan, a wheelchair accessible van that we have, and then we're sending the wheelchair accessible bus to St. Francis. So the concern that some people might have is why are we sending buses for one student? That's we are required to do that.
I think the question also is, that I've been asked, is why don't we just have the St. Francis, Allagash, St. John bus run be the bus with the handicap accessible? And I understand there might be capacity issues there. It sounds like it's pretty tight to begin with.
Yeah, it's already a capacity issue.
Yeah.
So,
The student count on the Allagash St. Francis bus is 101. It's a 77-passenger school bus. So there's quite a few students that don't take that bus, obviously, and right now, because of COVID, we've had a lot more parent transports. So we could alter for a few weeks, maybe, depending, and it's so liquid that some days we're at 52 on that bus, other days we're at 28. We constantly take student counts every day of that bus that's coming up from Allagash. So that's the reason that we ended up having to put a sole handicapped accessible bus in the St. Francis area to be able to transport the student that was specifically in a wheelchair, because the capacity of a wheelchair bus drops you down to the maximum of 52, and that's 3 per seat. Now, we can't allow too much social distancing if you're putting 3 per seat. So that's the issue, that's the reason that we went that process. I mean, I'm willing to make adjustments. Yeah, and I just,
want to know that that's out there.
sure.
We were receiving criticism before, so,
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. If there's an opportunity for another van, handicap accessible,
We would
we could purchase another vehicle that would have a a wheelchair accessible vehicle if that's the new vehicle that we just purchased. $64,000 is what that vehicle cost. So that's what it costs for that vehicle to be transporting the one student, plus we have to have a person in it that's going to be doing it. And right now, we're transporting with one of the buses that we have in the fleet and an ed tech that's bringing that one handicapped student down. If we could do every student that we need to transport from Allagash, St. Francis, St. John, and the wheelchair lift, certainly we would do it in that one bus. But we don't have room. We've already got some complaints from some of the folks that live relatively close to Fort Kent that the vehicle is overloaded. And it's not overloaded by number. Is it tight? Yes. Are we 2 per seat? Yes. And that's where we have to try to hang our hat currently. If we're at 2 per seat right now, 3 per seat is the only way we can do that, is basically if they're all the same family. Is how we're trying to, close contacting is not an easy process to try to figure out when they're all on a school bus. And assigned seating is not an easy solution either for 101 students on one bus.
We're here to hire people, not to discuss bus routes, but I thank you for the information.
But I'm here to answer those questions if I can help.
But you understand where?
I do.
Yeah, okay, very good. Okay, so, anybody else have anything to add? Is that an item? I think so.
I'm all in favor.
We're going to be here a while, Sean. All in favor? Very good. Motion approved. All in favor?
Item B, I have a calendar adjustment request for you. You have 2 copies of the calendar. One of them has December 17 as an early release. That's what our current calendar is. And then the proposed one has a change in that date. December 17 would change to a Valley workshop, a teacher workshop. This came at a request during a roundtable discussion with the teacher union of brainstorming different ways we can help the teachers with their level of feeling overwhelmed. And right now, prior to the holiday, they're seeing the new year coming and more is being put on their plate. They're hoping for some way to provide them with a little bit of breathing room. As I told you guys before, we can't just arbitrarily cancel student days and make it teacher days. We don't want to do that, and we don't have the flexibility to do that. So the thought here is to flip-flop what was the workshop day on June 20, put it on December 17, and then in return put the early release back in June, so that our teachers have a day before the holiday break to work on grades, work on their assessments, work on all of the things.
June 20 is a holiday, then.
June 20 is a holiday. You're right. Okay, so we have the flexibility of eliminating one student day because we have 276 in the calendar, 176 in the calendar, and we only need 175 by law, so we could eliminate the 20th altogether and still end on the 17th.
So moved.
Well, hold on. Let's
go. I'm ready to go, Keith. I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. So Ben, what are you looking for a motion?
I would like for you to approve this change with the fact knowing that the last student day will be on the 17th by eliminating one student day, which we have the flexibility to do.
Do we have a motion to approve Ben's recommendation?
Second. Toby
Made the motion, Gary seconded it. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed.
I would suggest we table the last item.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Make a motion to table the executive session.
I'll second.
Moved by Gary, seconded by Sarah Ashley. Any discussion?
I got with copies if you want.
I need separate.
No discussion.
No discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?